This is an ABC News special report. War with Iraq. Now reporting, Peter Jennings.
Well, that didn't take long. We said we'd be back at a moment's notice. Baghdad is being hit. 8:59, just before 9 o'clock in the evening, just seconds after we went off the air. We're back on the air to see this bombardment. Richard Engel in Baghdad, tell us what you know.
Yes, I'm here, Peter.
Go ahead.
Well, it just, as soon as we got off air, it just, wow, the whole sky just is lighting up in front of me. You can hear these right on the other side of the water. I guess these are presidential sites. Basically, the entire western side of the river is now smoking. There's another Ballista fire. I guess you'll hear the. There it is. That'll give you the idea of how close, unfortunately, this is right now. All of the tall buildings, these main government buildings that are on the other side of the river, are now on fire. This is like nothing we've seen before. This is shocking, and this is awe-inspiring. I don't know if that's what this is intended to be, and if that's a technical military thing, but this is much, much more intense than anything we've had earlier. It's hard to even see the western side of the city because it's just all up in smoke. There's occasional missiles, explosions coming down, large explosions. I don't know what can you see on the camera. Is your camera still operating, or has that building been destroyed?
Richard, we can see very well, and you are doing terrifically well. We'll just listen to you.
All right. Well, now there are, what can I tell you? Major explosions, sparks going up. There are anti-aircraft fire. If you're going to hold on 1 second, I'm putting on a helmet. Hold on.
Richard Engel, who's in the Palestine Hotel on the eastern side of the Tigris River there. I'm amazed that he can stay quite so calm. We're relying on, at the moment, Abu Dhabi television and Al Jazeera television, who are capturing this in the most...
The anti-aircraft fire seems to have changed direction. It is now coming slightly over the direction of the hotel, which is extremely disconcerting. It is hard to imagine that any of these large government buildings on the downtown area of Baghdad are still standing. I think there's another one that's plume of smoke. It's just, they're happening everywhere. Every few seconds, there's another burst of orange flames. That was another far away. Luckily, the wind is blowing in a... Let me look at this compass. The wind is blowing south, which is good. Otherwise, I would have to put on a gas mask to prevent all of this smoke, because the entire western side of the city is smoking, is being destroyed. As I'm watching half of Baghdad, it seems like, be destroyed. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but that's what it looks like to me right now. That this downtown government side is just being devastated. It's being pummeled right in front of me.
Richard, take a deep breath, and we'll just take a deep breath. We'll be just hang on for 1 second, and we'll reaffirm to the audience that what we believe we're seeing, totally understand Richard's feeling at the moment. What we believe we're seeing, what the U.S. has told us we are going to see, is very calculated, very careful bombing of very specific targets. This is supposed to be a situation, of course, in which 90% of the U.S. munitions dropped on an urban setting are specifically smart. Cruise missiles.
You just start to wonder about that other 10%. Let's hope they are relatively clever as well. What I'm watching here now, as it's continuing, is the bombardment of building after building, particularly all of the large government buildings. Most of the anti-aircraft fire has stopped, there's nothing coming up anymore. It was all at the end, later stages, just coming down. Now, I don't know if those were because people fled the posts, because the posts were destroyed, but right now, it seems to have gone quiet for a second. I thought that a few minutes ago, so I don't want to... Well, no, I was definitely mistaken. There was another very large explosion. You can see, because of the speed of sound and light, you can see the orange ball, and then you can hear it later. So I really don't like the aircraft fire going over this hotel. Like I said, I don't know what is coming down on us, but these are big, very big explosive ordnance that are coming down. They seem to be targeting, though it's hard to see on the far side of the river, the large buildings. I know there were several presidential palaces in there. I'm sure that they have all been hit at this stage. I can't confirm it, but that's my gut instinct.
Richard,
it'll be hard to know.
Richard, the moment you feel you want to go downstairs, please go. If you're happy, you sound extremely valuable. But the moment you feel you want to go down to the shelter, I know you're on the 14th floor. I can't tell at this moment exactly how far you are away from the bombing. Has there been any bombing on your side of the river at all that you're aware of?
No. Luckily, there hasn't been a single bomb on this side of the river. I can see some aircraft now, or look like aircraft, flying overhead. I can't hear them, but it looked like there were some aircraft for a second flying by. Yeah, it's all been concentrated on the opposite side of the river, where and if the live camera is still up, that means they haven't destroyed the information ministry. But all of the other buildings that are there, and there is also a hotel on that side of the river, the Al Rashid Hotel, where some other journalists are, and I really hope that my colleagues are okay.
We're told that fires are raging in several of the Iraqi presidential complexes in town, according to an eyewitness talking to Reuters, and as Richard points out, they're all over there on the western side of the city. We were told repeatedly by the U.S. command that the Al Rashid Hotel was not a safe place to be. We do not have any reporters or camera teams in it at the moment. Everybody has moved out of there. Go ahead, Richard.
Well, I'm not trying to cause a panic. I'm just expressing concern for my colleagues. I know that if there's anyone in there, they can't be feeling good right now. Some of the buildings are on fire. There is one very large building that I'm looking at right in the middle that I don't know if it was partially damaged or struck, or if it caught fire. Most of the buildings that were hit repeatedly and destroyed. Now I'm looking at least one building that was only hit partially. Now, I don't know why, what that might mean. This is, like I said, this is nothing like the other night. This is 10 times more intense, and it was all focused right in the area, not far away from where the main government buildings are, where the palaces are, and very, very large bombs. Now it seems to be moving away. It's still happening. There's still bombs dropping. They're just further away. So you can't hear quite the loud explosions. So I'm trying to catch my breath here and get a little grip on what I'm dealing with.
Well, it was quite astonishing. It was quite astonishing, and you are being wonderful. While you're talking, interestingly, you've given us a clue here that Abu Dhabi and Al Jazeera over there on the information ministry in the western part of the city, and they still seem to be very much up and operating. Abu Dhabi has sort of a panorama,
That's good news.
but they sometimes see a different thing than you were seeing. Meanwhile, Iraqi TV, which may be on the news, apparently showed a picture of Saddam Hussein and his son Qusay and the defense minister Saddam Hashim Ahmed today, and the news reader said that they had met today.
Whoa, there's about to be a big... Again, it's focused in that same area. I don't know if you can hear me, Peter. I know you were... are you with me?
I am, very much so.
Okay. There's now a little bit of anti-aircraft fire going up in the north, and this was another site right on the riverbanks that was hit with some sort of direct hit with a very loud explosion. Do we have any word from the Pentagon of what we're looking at, of what are they telling us? They must know more of what's coming down all around me. Do you know?
I don't. And if these cameras are on the top of the Information Ministry, which is, in, I said, the western part of the city, not too far from the river and also not too very far from the Al Rashid Hotel, they may be looking northwest at this moment, but I would be guessing. But there are some presidential compounds up northwest of the Ministry of Information. We now hear some vehicles on the street. They'll be around the Information Ministry. But more importantly, Richard, you're some distance away from this picture. There's a sense we have that you and the picture are in the same place. You're actually a little bit greater distance, right?
I'm in a car about a 5-minute drive from there. So that's the distance. It's
you're in a car?
I'm just trying to give the distance. I don't know how long it is in miles, but in a car it takes me about 5 minutes to get to the Information Ministry in normal driving.
Okay.
So it's about maybe a few miles.
And while we are watching what's happening in Baghdad Central Command, Richard is in the Palestine Hotel just over on the edge of the river. While we're watching what's happening in Baghdad, Central Command is confirming the death of a second U.S. Marine. We do not know the circumstances. That means that we have two USS one in circumstances unknown, one in combat. A Marine in the U.S. 1st Marine Expeditionary Force died as they were sweeping up on the Rumaila oil field in southern Iraq with all that black smoke. It may or may not have been a case of friendly fire or fratricide, as the military called it. We do not know that either. And there were 4 accidental deaths along with the 8 Brits who died on the helicopter yesterday. Tony Cortisman, we're going to stay with this picture, but I know you have studied very hard in the months before this began to understand precisely what the U.S. wants to target in this town. Richard Engel made a very, very good point that while I said 90% of this weaponry was supposed to be very precise, he wasn't so sure about the other 10%. So talk about that and about the targets.
Well, Peter, what we're probably seeing, and we are speculating, is a combination of bomber launch cruise missiles. They're much heavier than the Tomahawk, or something like a B-2 stealth bomber, which could be launching some 16 JDAMs, these 2,000-pound bombs that are very precise, 16 against 16 different targets in just one sortie over Baghdad. Now, we're not sure of that. They could be using F-117s, but these weapons normally have an accuracy today of about 10 to 15 meters, and they're very reliable. But of course, if a vein breaks, if anything goes wrong with that munition on release or on the way down...
Tony, stand by, sorry. Richard, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, I was listening to your conversation, and there are some, I definitely heard the sound of jets overhead, so that might give you some clues as to what kind of military operation is going on. Back to you guys.
Well, they could be Iraqi jets and they could be U.S. jets, of course. The Iraqis have an air capability, though they didn't use it very much during the Gulf War. Much of it fled to next door Iran. But they did get up and do some damage to U.S. forces. Tony, it is not likely, I'm guessing here now, it's not likely that the U.S. is flying this low at this point. Am I right?
Well, the problem is with something like the stealth, it could be that low. If they're sending any kind of jets up that are Iraqis, the only things that would have any conceivable purpose would be the relatively few MiG-29 modern Soviet fighters, and they'd risk being shot down by their own anti-aircraft fire. It's, I would think, more probable that those aircraft could be some form of R stealth, and we only have 2 types, the B-2 and the F-117.
It is astonishing in historic terms to watch this city being bombed even to the degree it is.
If you can hear that sound, it sounds like a sound of something moving very quickly in the sky.
Richard, you're doing absolutely huge explosions, which Richard, can you see these huge explosions over to the northwest?
Yes, I can see them. I think they must have just been for the first time in front of your camera lens, but those are, I've seen much bigger ones than that, the one that just went off. I think I now have an idea of what you're looking at, slightly to the north of that and the south. I mean, all over really that side. There's been that level of explosion, or maybe even twice as big.
But the message for this city tonight, for somewhere between 4 and 5 million people, is unmistakable. Baghdad, which of course means founded by God in Persian, the Arabs call it the city of peace, anything but that tonight. And the message that the U.S., the Bush administration, has wanted to send to the high command, whether or not Saddam Hussein did appear on television tonight, as the Iraqi newsreader said, is clearly unmistakable at this point. And if, John McWethy, if the precision is as previously...
Put it on the phone 1 second, okay? 1 second.
Go ahead. John McWethy, if as advertised the precision is up to par, then when this is over, Iraqis or Baghdadis will be able to look around and see that it was the high command that was struck, not the general population. One hopes.
That certainly is the intention, Peter, to take down the targets that they believe were part of the government and that the public would, in fact, know was part of the military structure. I must say, some of these barrages, it does appear to be, because of the way they are patterned, the work of a B-2 stealth bomber. I'd be very surprised if it's not. It is an incredibly automated aircraft that can let 2,000-pound bombs go, as Tony was saying, in a pattern and in a sequence. When I flew in this aircraft, Peter, the pilot said that he could have flown a bombing mission over Kosovo and never touched the controls. He could have eaten a ham sandwich, which is a pretty scary image.
Because it's so computer-driven, of course.
It's so totally computer-driven and is amazingly accurate. Of course, when it is a single explosion like that, it is more likely a different weapon system than the B-2 stealth bomber, either a cruise missile, or if there are F-117 stealth fighter bombers, they only carry two 2,000-pound bombs at a time.
Or give us a further lesson in munitions. Could it not be a secondary explosion on an original payload?
Yeah, but there's generally a big difference between a primary and a secondary. You can usually tell the difference. Just FYI, Peter, in about 12 or 13 minutes, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Myers are going to be here in the Pentagon briefing room. So it is interesting that as the U.S. is bearing down on Baghdad, Mr. Rumsfeld will again have a message to deliver of a different kind from here in the Pentagon.
If this attack on Baghdad tonight, it's a little after 9 o'clock in the evening in Baghdad time, and the city was fully lit, as we learned, we were reminded it had been before during Operation Desert Fox and also during the Gulf War. If the policy is consistent with the way the flag was flown and taken down in the south today and the way prisoners have been treated along the way, the U.S. will be very interested in keeping this large, modern city, though very frayed down at the edges city, keeping it intact. The bridges across the river here are a big issue. Many of them were bombed in the Gulf War, but the administration has said on background briefings before they want to keep these bridges intact so that if the population wishes to get out of the city under this kind of exemplary destruction, then they should have the right to do so. So at least in terms of planning and in terms of the briefings to us, is always this very careful balance about wishing to do destruction, wishing to destroy in terms of the regime and in terms of the military capacity, but wishing to keep the country and the infrastructure particularly intact. We had a former United Nations Humanitarian Administration on the broadcast with us last night who pointed out that the Iraqis have an extremely efficient government infrastructure and a bureaucracy which will be vital to the United States and anybody else who joins in the subsequent rebuilding of the country. and that the last thing anybody wants to do is to try to be destroying it at this particular moment. There are also more reports at the moment of attacks on Kirkuk, up northeast of Baghdad, and Mosul, which is up north of Baghdad. So, as John McCarthy and Martha Raddatz have been reporting earlier on, this is the date that the war was originally supposed to have begun. And so, John, it is possible that in some way, shape, or form, we are back on the original plan that was supposed to begin today.
The ground forces are less than 200 miles from Baghdad. They would not have been across the border.
I'm talking about the air. I'm obviously talking about the air campaign.
The air campaign has been much more progressive than I think they originally designed it. But Don Rumsfeld is very proud of the way the U.S. has been able to take a plan and apply it to get a certain effect. He's big on this effects-based pressure. And he will undoubtedly talk about that again today. He is trying to squeeze the Iraqi regime and spook them, rattle them, and perhaps more important, to influence the people who are around them.
While it's gone momentarily quiet in Baghdad, at least from our point of view, we've managed to make touch after many hours with ABC's John Berman, who is with the Marines. He and his platoon and his traveling companions have been in the country for about 6 hours, and he's just been able to make connection with us. John?
Peter, the contrast couldn't be any greater between what's going on in Baghdad and where I am in southern Iraq right now. As you said, we've been in Iraq for about 6 to 7 hours, and we have seen no resistance whatsoever. In fact, we've seen no Iraqi life whatsoever. We've been driving up in a very large convoy on the backs of 7-ton trucks, about 20 Marines per vehicle, and off in the distance, we can see nothing. The only living people we passed were one Shia Bedouin family. The Marines sent some interpreters to talk to them, and the Marines very welcoming and happy to see them. But as of now, no action. Off into the distance to the northeast of where we are, occasionally we can see flashing lights. I think that might be Baghdad, but I can't.
John, do you know, hang on just a second. Can you hear the noise of Baghdad?
I can't hear that, Peter.
That is outgoing. John, how quickly have you been moving? Oh, by the way, forgive me, John, 1 second. That is indeed the roof of the Information Ministry. I recognize those tents on the roof of the Information Ministry from where we were all broadcasting before they closed it down. And we're told that in the last couple of days, I think Richard Engel can confirm this when he comes back, that the Iraqis got out of the building because they were pretty convinced it was going to be a target. But in part through, so we say, the bravery of the people who have stayed on that roof in the western part of the city, not very far from where the bombing is occurring. You can tell because it does extraordinary things on occasion to the iris in the camera when an explosion goes off right in front of them, but not for the first time. Al Jazeera, and now tonight also Abu Dhabi Television, have been absolutely on the front line for a bombing attack, as they were in Kabul when the U.S. attacked in Afghanistan. John, go ahead. We haven't heard from you in so long. Tell us as much as you can.
I'm sorry, Peter, I missed the last question.
I was just saying we haven't heard from you in such a long time. Tell us as much as you can.
It's been a very slow journey for the Marines that I've been with. The Marines like to say what they do is they stand and wait, and they stand and wait some more. Stay tuned is what they say. We left our camp yesterday in Kuwait at about 9:30, 10 o'clock local time. We were on the road for most of the day yesterday. We camped last night, still on the Kuwaiti border up above us where we were sleeping. We saw a great many missiles going off all night. Yesterday was also a little bit of there was some excitement yesterday, at least 4 times, I believe, maybe more. We had gas warnings. We all were told to put on our gas masks. I don't know if you can see right now, I'm wearing my chemical protective gear. All the Marines are wearing the full suits right now. But today, there have been no chemical warnings whatsoever. No warning to put on the gas mask. It's been a very smooth but slow ride, so into Iraq, Peter.
Interesting, John. Many thanks. We're glad to hear from you. We were worried about you for a while, but it's nice to hear your voice and even see you. Though seeing you may be overstating it just a little bit. John Berman, who's with the Marines, and we now know that he is 6 or 7 hours into Iraq, and we are, of course, looking at the Iraqi capital. ABC's Brian Hartman reports to us from the Pentagon now that Air Force aircraft, Navy aircraft, and ships, which is a reference to cruise missiles, were all slated to participate in this particular operation. And the ships were set to fire cruise missiles, and the planes were set to drop what are called JDAM precision-guided bombs. John McWethy will correct me if I get this wrong, but a JDAM has basically got a kit on it with tail fins and a guidance system and a small computer that turns a bomb into a small bomb, or turns a bomb into a guided bomb, and this guided by satellites. And it costs about $20,000 and is fairly inexpensive to fit up. How did I do, Jack?
You did very well,
Okay.
Peter. It is a relatively inexpensive bomb. The cruise missiles they've been using are about $1 million a pop. So they have their advantages, and now the JDAM has become the weapon of choice for the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps.
And is that a matter of accuracy, or is that a matter of accuracy and cost?
Oh, I think it's both. If you need extreme accuracy and it's a clear day, you probably want to use a laser-guided bomb or a television-guided bomb. But if there is any doubt about what the weather is, you want to use a JDAM.
I think we're always a bit self-conscious talking about the technology of war when people are being killed by any opposing forces at the moment. But the United States has advanced to such a degree technologically in the last decade since the Gulf War, or so we've been told to believe. We remind ourselves that during the Gulf War, all of us who watched it religiously, and that was so much of the country, kept seeing one, smart bomb after the other hit a target. When we got to the end of the war, we found out that the smart bombs were vastly below the levels of performance they had been advertised as. That's worth keeping in mind, but it always seems strategy is intended to kill the leadership of Iraq, and to do, we are told repeatedly, liberate the people of Iraq. So what exactly we're seeing and how long it may continue is still very unclear to us. And as Jack McWethy has said, in a couple of minutes, the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Rumsfeld, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Myers, will give us a briefing. Mr. Rumsfeld has made it very clear in previous briefings he's not interested in telling the public too much, but he will clearly be in a position to tell us something more about this second phase of the campaign. Richard Engel, are you back with us?
Yes, I am, Peter. So I was just saw an ambulance pass below the street. There has been, again, a few rockets coming on. It's not the same intense bombardment that we have seen, that we saw earlier. You could probably tell from the tone of my voice I'm a little bit more calm, but it is still definitely going on. I'm staring at buildings that are on fire. At one stage I could hear, the bombs were so powerful that I could feel the wind blowing against my face, and I'm about a mile away from these things. So it is, you definitely feel part of this conflict. I hope I don't get any closer than this.
Richard, any are there ambulances in the street? Do you hear sirens? Do you see civilian activity anywhere?
No, the streets are empty, completely empty. But I did see one siren, one ambulance with its silence wailing drive by below the hotel, but that was the only one. Everything else is deadly quiet.
And are you anywhere near a television set? And do people, because I know people in Baghdad, if they're prepared to use their satellite dishes illegally, can see Abu Dhabi, actually not even illegally, they can see Abu Dhabi television, right?
They can, but not me. I have, Iraqi television is still broadcasting, but it seems to be just broadcasting pre-recorded the news of the day, just broadcasting as if, normally, as if there hadn't been a significant change. I think it would probably be a stretch for them to go into live coverage. They don't have the same sort of resources that
I know you.
that ABC does.
I know you were completely preoccupied with what was going on in front of you and around you. But did you happen to notice these pictures we've heard about Saddam Hussein and his oldest son on television tonight?
No, I didn't. I have the television on behind me, but I haven't been watching it, to be totally honest.
So we'll just let you keep going as...
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to catch my breath and let my blood cool down a little bit. I don't know if this is over. I don't know if more is coming. It seems to be quiet for the time being. When I was up on the roof, and now I can see there are some high altitude aircraft. They look almost like satellites, white dots in the sky. I'm looking at 4 of them. They look almost exactly like satellites, but they move back and forth, so they're obviously not satellites. And they seem to now be clustered over the area that was damaged. I assume these might be surveillance planes that could be assessing the damage, though I really don't want to speculate too much. I'm not a military expert.
Well,
and basically, I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead.
waiting for Donald Rumsfeld to come out, and he should be here in about a minute. So please, if you'd like, just talk us right up until the end.
Okay, I'm looking again. There is some still fires raging across the way. These fires, there doesn't seem to be any fire trucks or emergency vehicles in coming to put them out. They're just smoldering on their own, completely unattended. Now that doesn't bode well because this, although it is a government area, there are people who live among it, and it must be very difficult for these people right now. And it's been hard for us to view the damage. The Iraqi officials haven't been allowing us to go and visit, which is odd. You would think that it would be in their interest to show us the damage, but I think they don't want to because they're concerned that it would somehow pass intelligence on to the American forces if they could then see exactly what they had struck. And for example, they said that one of the residences today of a family member of Saddam Hussein was destroyed in last night's campaign. And I said, well, where is it? What city was it? At least in Baghdad. And they wouldn't give us any kind of information. And I suspect that they were concerned about confirming any kind of intelligence, because if they had told us where it was, and indeed that was the residence, then it would confirm some sort of intelligence that they had gotten. It would give more credibility to a source that had an intelligence source. So I think they're also trying to protect these sites, but who knows? That could change. It could change as the night develops.
And as we know, Richard, thanks very much. We're going to break away and give you a little rest at the moment because the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs are going to brief. You've done a wonderful job for us. And as I said, take a deep breath, and we'll be back to you as soon as the briefing is over. It is also possible, by the way, that the Iraqis are not interested in showing any of the leadership targets or the Republican Guard targets or the security service targets having been destroyed or attacked at least by U.S. forces. But if experience is a guide, we know that if civilians have been hurt, and we all know there's a possibility of that, then it is quite possible that Western journalists will be taken to see them as well, as pictures are of Saddam Hussein, his son, and the defense minister, Saddam Hashim Ahmed, president in his uniform, and that is his commander, his defense minister, Saddam Hashim Ahmed, on the right. Don't know precisely who this is here. That's Saddam in the center, his son, Qusay, on the left, and one other person, we do not know who it is, just the four of them in the room. And certainly Saddam Hussein looks better. We do not know the circumstances. We do not know the date. We're not aware of any clues here. But he certainly looks better than the man who appeared on television after the attack on the compound the night before last. And that is the skyline in Baghdad at the moment as we wait for the Secretary of Defense. John, just before the Secretary comes up, what are we really looking for him to talk to us about today, except all the obvious things like a description of what's going on now? What do we want to ask him particularly?
Oh, I think knowing him, he will try to frame the argument that if you, the people of Iraq, are listening, and if you, the military of Iraq, are listening, and by the way, his remarks are almost simultaneously translated and fed on a radio system that is beamed over Baghdad now virtually 24 hours a day. So what he says will be sent out to the Iraqi people. I expect he will tell them the things that he has told them before and explain to them what the United States is doing, tell them how they can remain safe, to stay away from military units, and if you are in a military unit, the things that you can do to avoid being attacked by the United States, and to assure them